First of all, good morning, TSU. How are you? You guys, come on, give me some energy. Is it really afternoon now? It is. Where's the time going? Where is it going? See, I come in from Austin, so my day gets started pretty early. This is the fourth time that I've been here to talk to you guys about academic advising, and as my colleagues who preceded me, they gave you a lot of input on what academic advising is and what are the benefits. My role today is to talk to you about legislatively how that will affect how you all operate, what laws are the states putting into place and why, what is going to be the motivating factors for you to get involved and really get behind this academic push, assessment push that's going on by the state, and tell you some of the benefits of that as well. So I like to start my presentation by just briefly telling you a little bit more about me and why I'm here. I go by DJ. My name is Juana, but I go by DJ Lozada. I work for the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, first as the Director of Communications directly to the Commissioner of Higher Education, Raymond Paredes, and then moving into a new role as Diversity Officer, Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement, which basically meant if it was black or brown, it came to my office. That's just the reality of it. I had all the Hispanic serving institutions in the state and all of the black serving schools, the HBCUs, public and private. I actually was the grant administrator for the education preparatory programs for all of the HBCUs in the state of Texas. Now, how did I get there being a communications and public affairs person? I can't really tell you other than I think the powers that be, specifically the legislature, realized very quickly that I was very good with process. I'm very good at analyzing systems and processes and figuring out where are the gaps and then making recommendations to close those gaps. You don't need a PhD to do that. Just got to pay attention and listen a lot. You guys are the subject matter experts. I'm not going to stand here and tell you your job. But I can tell you, and I have told every group that I've talked to before you, that the amazing thing about TSU that makes me carry this institution close to my heart, and I went to a PWI. I didn't go. I'm a graduate of the University of North Carolina. Go Heels. But the thing about TSU that I just adore about the faculty, the professional staff, and support staff is that you guys have the hearts of lions. You take 50 cents and you turn it into $50. You take students that nobody else wants on their campus and you turn them into STEM graduates. You turn them into teachers. You turn them into lawyers. That kid that everybody said won't make it out of, oh, they're going to drop out their freshman year. I don't even know how they got into college. You take that student, and it might take you a little bit longer to do it, but you get that student graduated. And you give that student a chance to break the cycle of poverty that has existed in his or her life for generations. You give them the opportunity to be the first in their families to actually graduate. Good morning, good afternoon. I said that twice. I need to get my time right. You give them the opportunity to be the first ones in their families for generations to attain a college degree. Nobody else can boast that like TSU. You look at the data. TSU is #1 in the state of Texas for graduating at-risk population students, which is code for minority and economically disadvantaged, let's face it. Okay? But that's what you guys do every day, and that's what makes you special. That's what makes the students you serve special. So a lot of the things that we're going to address here in this presentation, we'll talk about what the holistic approach that the state is taking to address deficits in, for our purposes here, academic advising. But we will also look at how that directly impacts TSU and the students that you serve, understanding that your population is a lot different from what UT's population is. It's a lot different from what your neighbor across the street at the University of Houston has. The good news is there's a lot of good news. From where you came from to where you are now, you've done things, TSU as a body. You put in, you put in GPA requirements to be enrolled. You have an academic learning village that you'll hear about later, where freshmen are actually living with their faculty and advisors and getting what they need. There's so much good going on at TSU that you all should really be proud of the accomplishments and the strides that you're making. I hear you're sending students to China. You have a Chinese institute. Go ahead, TSU. That's all I have to say to that. Go ahead. So we know what the function of academic advising is. It is the lifeline of your institution. It is the first contact that students get in their student experience with their academic careers. It's the foundation, okay? Everybody in this room, whether you are faculty, professional staff, or other staff, because you do have some other staff advising. Of these three, faculty, professional, or mixed, which one would you say TSU has? Anybody? What type of faculty advising model does TSU really have? Thank you very much. It's mixed. You are not faculty advisors solely. And the reason for that is because at TSU, depending on the department, each department is responsible for how they advise. Some of them use professional staff, some of them use faculty, and I've heard through the grapevine that they're even using some staff that's not even professional academic advisors. My message has been since I came here, and it will be today, that has to stop. And I'm going to explain to you why that has to stop. That is not an effective advising model that can sustain with the new regulations that are coming down from the state. And we know how it benefits the students. You get that one-on-one interaction. It promotes student achievement, and it also promotes academic success. I'll skip that. There are a lot of roles of an academic advisor, as you can see. Okay? You have to provide guidance on the core curriculum. Now you're going to have degree plan requirements. And oh, by the way, the core curriculum is changing as of 2014. You'll hear more about that later. You have to help them in making their academic decisions. Okay? Now you have additional state mandated policies. You have to advise students on tuition requirements for excessive undergraduate hours. If they keep repeating courses or they max out, you have to be able to advise them on that. Semester credit hours required for an undergraduate degree in the state of Texas is 120 hours. 120. No more, no less. Now there are some majors like engineering and some of the STEM type fields that will have an additional requirement, but those are the exception and not the norm. You also have to know about the limitations of the number of courses that can be dropped and under what circumstances. So in this presentation that I will make available to you, all the attendees once this is over, I also put the Texas Education Code where you can find that and read more about it. Okay, because you need to know for yourselves what may or may not be acceptable while you do your role. Okay? All of this, the underlying purpose for all of academic advising is to decrease time to graduation and improve the overall academic experience of the students for whom you serve. Now, why is this more important to you all than just that the students are happy? Who can tell me in this room how you all receive your funding at this institution? Nobody? It's formula funding, okay? Based on attendance in the 12th day of class. Am I speaking Greek to anybody? Are you guys following me? Right, you know that you got to have those bodies in the chair the 12th day of enrollment in order for you to receive maximum formula funding from the state. So, the new law that's being promoted by the coordinating board is something called funding on completion. And your esteemed colleague, Dr. James Douglas, who has graced us with his presence, I'm sure is up to his eyeballs in understanding how this is going to affect TSU and what the impact is. Okay, so what that means is the state is going to withhold some of your funding, some of your regular formula funding, up to 10%, and they're going to give you what's called incentive points. And those incentive points will be based on success measures. How many students who are enrolled actually complete the courses for which they are enrolled for that period of time. And when they don't complete, you lose an incentive point, so you don't get that money back. Now you already know that you're operating with less money that is necessary to keep up with the pace of students coming into the pipeline. If I don't leave you all with anything else today, I want you to be clear about this. All of these new rules that are coming down the pike are tied to a philosophy. When we came through school, education was considered a right. You had the right. Actually, people marched and died for the right for people of color to be admitted, especially in the state of Texas, to be admitted to universities so that you could get a college degree. Matter of fact, that's why TSU exists, is to help provide a place for students to come, particularly African American students, to come to receive a quality education. Now in 2012, the prevailing philosophy is education is a privilege, not a right. It is a privilege. And all the laws that are being promoted, if you look at the federal level to the state level, the prevailing thought is not everybody that wants to be in college deserves to be there. And not everybody that's already in college deserves to stay. So we're going to figure out a way to help you leave, so we can make room for the students who really want to be there and who are really prepared to be there. Now, I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm just telling you that's where these laws are coming from. Accountability, doing more with less, cost efficiency, you all hear these terms being bandied about. That's what it has to do with. Senate Bill 36, that was passed last legislative session, actually gave the coordinating board under the Texas Education Code the right to study a revamp of academic advising across the state, okay? One of the things that I wanted to show you, this is from Senator Judith Zaffirini, who is the ranking Democrat on the Higher Education Committee for the Texas Legislature. And as you can see, she is interested in developing first steps to revamp academic advising and make it uniform across the state. Now here's the thing. Do you think that a model that works well for Texas A&M will work at TSU? Do you think that approach, that one size fits all, will that benefit TSU? Why? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Just yesterday, I had the privilege and the honor to execute the first annual Texas Black Educators Summit in Austin, Texas. We had an amazing turnout, and we got to discuss a lot of interesting things. And one of the things that came out, we had public education, 2-year and 4-year institutions, and private institutions in the mix discussing what needs to be the priorities for the upcoming legislative session for educating African American students. And one of the things that came out is public ed was saying, you know, we have students that come to us with more challenges, but we actually get funded less for that student. We might have $5,000 allocation for students, whereas a more affluent, less diverse neighboring school district might have a $7,500 allotment for students. You can do a whole lot more with that extra $2,500 per student than you can if you're operating from a deficit. So I submit to you, if there is a uniform academic assessment tool that's put into place, it will not inherently benefit TSU if you are not proactive in your approach in dealing with these changes that are coming down the pipeline. Why am I going backwards? Let me see here. So, if you have effective advising, you have higher GPAs, you have increased student persistence, you decrease time to completion, and you increase your graduation rates. But that advising has to be first accurate, 2 appropriate, and 3 timely. Well, how do you get accuracy, appropriateness, and timeliness without training and without resources and support? Currently, you all are being asked to do these things, but you're not adequately being supported to get it done. Is that a fair statement? Because you know what you all do in your day. I doubt very seriously that there's anybody in this room that just goes home and sits in the Barker Lounger and watches TV. Your day doesn't end when you leave TSU because you're still working on behalf of the students you serve. Is that correct? That's why you're at TSU. If you wanted an easy job, you'd be somewhere else, right? Okay, so, but this is the benefits of that advising and what needs to be done in order for it, because you know what? Your formula funding will increase if you decrease time to graduation, increase your student persistence, which all ends with more graduates. Because you know the big hit for TSU is always you're last for the state for public four-year institutions for your graduation rate. Now that's changing, but that takes time to graduate a cohort to get the data. And more specifically, this has to be data-driven, right? Okay, so this is what we do. This is what the folk do. How's your academic advising at TSU? Oh, it's good. How do you quantify good? How do you qualify it? Well, see, we had this student and they had this problem and we fixed it, so it's good. Anecdotal evidence does not work for the legislature. You can tell all the success stories you want. If you don't have the data to back it up, you don't have a message when it comes to fighting for your formula. Am I correct, Dr. Douglas? Okay, because that's your job to do that. But how high up the ladder must you all go? How much more do you have to give? That saying, you can't squeeze blood out of a turnip? Well, I'm sure many of you in this room feel pretty much bled dry. How much more do I have to give? Well, I'll tell you, according to the state, you must now help a student declare a major in a timely manner, and you must help them to be on an individual degree plan, and you have to show a process where any change to that plan is approved prior to that change being made. That's not a TSU policy, that's the state of Texas policy. And that change is coming down the pike for your next fall semester. And you need to know that. But how do you get to effective advising if you don't examine what it is that you're doing that's working well and what needs to be addressed? You have to do an assessment. And when you have a mixed academic advising model like TSU currently employs, that's really difficult to do because it depends on the department, it depends on the chair, it depends on if it's faculty advising or if it's professional staff. It depends on if there's a hybrid blend of that happening. Someone's question was, you have education, the education advisors going across majors and providing academic advising services, and it may conflict with what other people are doing. Okay, we have to clean that up. Academic advising services vary depending on how it's structured, as I was just discussing. What are your staffing patterns? Do you have enough professional staff to assist the faculty in the role of advising the students appropriately? Also, do you have the online tools available to assist students in making good choices and allowing faculty and professional staff who are advising students to monitor student progression to make sure that they're not making bad choices? I have heard over and over again here at TSU The students are gaming the system by signing up for any classes just to game the system and get financial aid. How many people in that room believe that that is true to a measurable extent for your students? Students are just taking classes to get financial aid because they think financial aid is unlimited and it's never going to run out, right? And I can just keep getting financial aid until I decide I hit that magic number and I graduate. 170 hours is what your students on average require to graduate for a 120-hour degree. They could have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree by the time they hit their 4-year degree mark. And guess what? TSU has the highest average of number of hours actually successfully completed by a student without a degree. That's a dubious distinction that you guys can no longer afford. But it's not because you're not doing your jobs. It all comes down to, do you have the available resources, and what is the priority of the institutional leadership for academic advising? The reason that you all are here today is not because, TLEX got to spend some money down and we got to figure out a way to get some training in to show the state that we did it. You're here because your leadership wants you to understand that without your buy-in, no matter what they put into place, ultimately it will not work if you are not understanding of why it has to be that way. Okay? Because the workload is going to increase, not decrease. But the beauty of it is, we have the power, as TSU people know, you figure out a way to work smarter, not harder. Okay? Because you already work hard enough. Now we got to figure out how can we work smarter. So your provost and your president has asked you to be here today for these sessions so that you understand why we have to change. Why this is not just some arbitrary decision by an administrator sitting on the Hill affecting your lives when you're the one that has to do all the work. You have to have a cyclic method of assessment that is focused on outcomes, measurable outcomes. Now, the national body that oversees, that kind of sets the standards for academic assessment is NACADA. We also have a Texas Association of Academic Advisors that does the same thing. Texas has adopted, the state of Texas has adopted as its official model something called the Texas model, which is based off of NACADA. NACADA tells you how to do an effective assessment. I had a meeting with your provost and I talked to him and I said, Provost Ahia, you don't have to hire a consultant to come in and tell you how to do an effective assessment. The tools are already out there, okay? And what qualifies as a quantifiable measurement? You might say by the end of the second semester of enrollment, 80% of our students will be able to explain what the core curriculum is and make appropriate course selections. How will you know if they're making appropriate core selections? Because now you have to report that to the state. Okay? So if you have a student on an academic advising plan and they fall off that plan, the state is now monitoring you, will be monitoring you, and they will call over to TSU, to the appropriate department who will have to oversee this, and they will say, explain to me why student X is off their degree plan. And I don't know isn't going to be an acceptable answer. And you know when that person gets the call, they're going to call you. And they're going to say, why is Hakeem Marshall, who is a declared biology major, why is he taking an engineer course? And you know Hakeem might be, I'm making this up because he's probably not taking an engineer. Why is he taking basket weaving? Because he wants to gain financial aid is no longer an acceptable answer. And you will have to adjust his plan. In other words, there's going to have to be some accountability. When a student changes majors 2 and 3 times, the state is now going to be monitoring that. So that means that TSU now has to monitor that more effectively. You have some departments that do an outstanding job of monitoring progress, but you have other departments that are deficient, either because they don't have the resources, the manpower, or both. How are we going to fix that? You have to create a framework. You have to look at the effectiveness of your services. You have to do an institutional comparison. What is Prairie View doing in relation to TSU since you serve similar populations? Okay? What are the best practices that are out there? What are the internal best practices, and then what are the external best practices? What is TSU already doing that's working well? If you have the business school, you know, the academic progression of the students in the business school is on track 78% of the time, let's find out what they're doing to keep their students retained. If you're trying to figure out why TSU loses almost 33% of your students between the sophomore and freshman year, you lose 30% the freshman year. You lose another 33% between sophomore and freshman year. Well, I just found out the answer today, talking to some of your colleagues at lunch. Because when they get to be juniors, they get to pick their own classes without an advisor. What? Obviously, that's not working, and that's borne out in your data. So that's going to have to be examined, and there's going to have to be a system put into place where students are compelled to see their academic advisor. And what's going to compel them is your paycheck. Because now, if those students continue not to come to you for advising, you're going to get hit by the state, you're going to lose incentive points on your formula funding, and that's going to reduce the amount of funding that you get, which is going to reduce the amount of money TSU has to pay faculty and staff. Okay, that's the underlying compelling reason why it needs to be done. The overlying compelling reason, for which I'm sure you are all here, is because you want these students to get a good education. Now, I'm not going to go through this, but it's here. When you guys are ready, the good news is I've done it for you. And it wasn't even hard, because all I had to do, this isn't my work. I went to NACADA's website, compared it with what the Texas model is for the state of Texas. This is your assessment methodology that I've included in this PowerPoint presentation. It's yours. If you follow this template, there are 10 activities involved. You answer these questions, you got your assessment advising model. Merry Christmas. You're welcome. And when Provost Ahia said, "What? This is online?" I said, "Yes, it's online, right here." I cut and paste. That's all I did. I cut and paste. And this is the accepted model by the coordinating board. So the good news is, when you guys do your QEP, you will be able to demonstrate within that QEP what you're doing to enhance your academic advising tools for your students. Just by following this. If each department does that, and there's a committee created of some kind, and there's oversight for kind of gelling together what the departments are doing, activities 1 through 10, you're done. Okay? And then for the flow chart, and I don't expect you to see this because it is small, you have to map your experience and what the expectations are, and then you have to collect data on that. Not it's good, not it's bad, not see what had happened was. That's not going to work. You have to have metrics, measurable data. Okay, so in conclusion, what I also put in this presentation for you all is some of the best practices that's currently taking place around the state in academic advising. Okay? I've included a brief overview of the program. For example, University of Texas San Antonio, they have an Office of Graduation Initiatives. How cool is that? A whole office dedicated to just helping kids graduate. Work out the glitches between graduation. Not 20 different places to go. Hey, I just found out I'm short a class for graduation. What can I do? They go to the Office of Graduation Initiatives. It's the program contact is Christy Myers. Here's her email address. There's her phone number. And there's their website. Can I make it any easier? If you really want to know what they're doing that's been recognized by the state and or nationally, give Christy Meyer a call and say, what are you all doing that we might be able to replicate at TSU? Guess what? It doesn't cost you any extra money, and you might actually come up with something that you already have in place that you can just tweak and enhance to suit the needs of TSU and make it your own. And then you have another tool that you can use towards your incentive points funding to demonstrate to the state that you are meeting their requirements under the Texas model. You don't have, like I said, this presentation will be available to you, so don't worry about trying to copy all of this down. It's yours. UT Arlington, they have a program that's been recognized by the coordinating board, talking about their advisor training and development, what they put in place. Their program contact is here. There's her email address, and there's her website. She prefers not to get phone calls. But you can email her and get advice. Sam Houston State University, that gets a lot of the overflow students that TSU doesn't get. I know because this is one of my schools too. We have a lot of programs in place for African American male retention and success, and they have their early warning and intervention program that has been nationally recognized. Again, and I have said this to your other groups, and I'll say it again. I'll say it to Dr. McLeod, and I'll say it to Professor Jennings. Please get Dr. Bernice Strauss on your campus. Please do yourself a favor and bring that woman to your campus, because I can tell you, I've worked with her extensively over the years. She's got it. She is brilliant at minority retention and success programs. Now, she doesn't know that I'm saying this to you, okay? But if you call her and say, I'd like to dialogue with you about your programmatic success for retaining African American and Latino students, she is just the most welcoming, warm person. Sure, when do you want to get together? Do a site visit. Invite her to TSU and have her give you some recommendations about what Sam Houston State is doing with no money, okay? Because the money that they're getting from the state, I actually was funding TSU at a much higher level than Sam Houston State. I was giving them $10,000. And that woman was taking that $10,000 and actually impacting her retention and graduation rates. It's crazy. And she's about to retire, so I really, if there's anybody in the room who deals specifically with that issue, please give her a call and have a conversation. She's amazing. Okay? I also put some other notable practices there for you for consideration. Nothing new. There are no new ideas under the sun. I know that you all are capable and smart enough to come up with these on your own, but when you're in the assessment process, that is the time to get to your leadership, to get them to understand why these things it might be time for your idea that you put forward 5 years ago. Mandatory contact hours, I recommended that 8 years ago. Okay, do it now and see if you can get their attention. There are some other resources that I put up here for you all with their websites, including NACADA, okay, and a lot of their resource material. The Council for the Advancement for Standards in Higher Education, which is also a resource used by the Coordinating Board, as well as the Coordinating Board report on the Texas model. That's here. It's a live link in the actual presentation. Click and read. Okay, it's about 38 pages long from start to finish. And my contact information is there at the end. I do specialize in minority retention and success strategies. And I am an independent consultant now and also the publisher of the Texas Higher Education Journal. I feature TSU as much as I possibly can because I believe in you and I just celebrate the work that you all do. And with that, I will conclude my presentation.